I stood at the doorway, watching the angry lady Nikki in the pouring rain. Her red hair was all tangled up, sticking to her face and skin. Even with all the noise from the rain, I could make out what she was yelling about. Turns out my wife, Beth, was messing around with Nikki's husband. Nikki wanted me to stop it. A while back, Beth surprised me with a call while I was away for work. Rain was streaking down my hotel window when she dropped the bomb about wanting a divorce. She said we'd been apart too long. Thing is, I'd only been gone a couple of weeks, and we'd barely been together for 5 months since I got back from the army. I had no clue there were problems between us. She never said a word. Turns out she'd been hooked up with this guy for at least 3 months, maybe more, while I was out on business. I only figured it all out about a week before Nikki showed up, and even then, I didn't have solid proof. I tried to come up with a plan. Beth agreed to counseling before I found out about the affair, but she stopped going after just 2 sessions. I figured she was trying to get the counselor to talk me into staying, making it look like she was trying. It was important to her, especially in her parents' eyes, so she kept up the act, seeing this guy while living off my money until she was sure it made her look good and he was ready to leave his own family. Beth and I had 2-year-old twin girls, Angie and Amy. She often left them with me when I got home from work so she could hit the gym or go for runs to keep herself fit, but it turns out after her workouts, she'd sneak off with her lover. I was beyond upset. Every time I tried to talk things out, she'd get mad and blame me even though she was the one doing wrong. She complained about taking care of the kids while I worked, saying I was using them against her, which wasn't true since I spent more time with them even though I worked full-time. Navigating the divorce proceedings with legal counsel proved disheartening. Adultery held little sway in our state. It bore no significant consequences. Beth appeared well aware that courts typically favored awarding custody and child support to the wife, regardless of her actions. Alimony for several years was also customary, especially with young children in the equation. This way, the ex-wife could stay home and be a good mom instead of rushing to work. So, there stood this tall, awkward person with ugly red hair, a nose like a beak, and thin, angry lips. She'd put on some extra pounds after having a 6-month-old baby, which didn't look good on her skinny frame. Anger and the cold rain made her skin blotchy. I couldn't even speak, so I backed off, held the door open and waved for her to come in. I knew it wouldn't help if neighbors heard her screaming at me outside. She followed me in, still humiliating me. Loudly, while I walked to the dining table and pulled out a chair for her, then sat down myself and waited. Her anger turned into bitter tears, then trembling sobs, and finally just sobs. Her head dropped into her hands on the table, and her hair became a wet, limp mound of dark copper. I waited a bit longer until her runny nose stopped. "Are you done? Be quiet," I said softly. She glared at me with anger in her red eyes, sniffed twice, but didn't say anything. So I went on. "If I could fix this, I would. I hate it just as much as you do." I kept explaining how the law worked and how it put me at a disadvantage. You want me to confront her without getting angry, but that could land me in prison, then on the streets. Not a great plan. We sat together in heavy silence until I got up to make some hot tea. The rain outside was chilling to the bone. I couldn't help but steal glances at her. She wasn't your conventional beauty, but there was something about her that caught my eye. The moment the warm tea coursed through her, she shivered. "Wow, I didn't realize how cold I was," she murmured. Without a word, she suddenly caught sight of her own chest and cursed under her breath, wrapping her arms around herself. I couldn't help but sigh. Somehow, this was the most excitement I'd had in months. "Need a sweater?" "Which one's your wife's?" I offered, fetching a hoodie that she quickly slipped into. What followed was a bit of a strip tease as she wriggled out of her wet shirt and bra, then back into the hoodie. I gathered the wet clothes and tossed them in the dryer, trying not to make it obvious that I was watching the impromptu show. Handing her a towel, I suggested, "Dry off your hair." Gratefully, she began dabbing at her hair, and I couldn't help but notice how her movements made the sweater outline her figure. It was odd feeling this attraction in such a moment, but I allowed myself a glance. Once her hair was somewhat dry, she stopped and grumbled, "I hate them." "Me too. Didn't see it coming," I admitted, sensing a shared pain between us. "I can't compare to her. She's fit, stunning. I've put on weight since having my kid," she confessed. She wasn't overweight, just a bit out of shape, much like myself. "But she's fit because she has the luxury of time, and you're beautiful in your own way," I found myself saying, surprising even me with a hint of optimism. "So what do we do now?" she asked, lost. "I'm at a loss. Every time I think I'm ahead, I end up alone, broke, and fighting to see my kids," I shared, opening up about my struggles. "What if you had proof of her cheating?" she pondered. "It wouldn't matter in court, but it might give us an edge elsewhere," I considered, thinking out loud. She sighed. I just want to make them pay. For the first time, I felt a spark of alliance. Let me think. There has to be a way to turn the tables, I said, feeling a strange sense of camaraderie in our shared misery. Seriously, we all slip up now and then. We've just got to catch them in the act. And the sneaky paychecks from his cousin. That's where we start, I was piecing it together. The new fancy shoes in Beth's closet didn't buy themselves. There was mystery cash flowing. Beth's spending didn't add up. She perked up, a flicker of determination in her eyes. We could actually do this, I said with a hopeful grin. Piece of cake. We'll round up the kids and sleuth around. Think of us as a quirky cross between Magnum P.I. and the Brady Bunch. No need for the kids to tag along. My sister Angie's got Jamie, she can take them, she suggested, her mind racing ahead. Where are your kids now? She asked. Upstairs, sleeping, I answered. She glanced around, her gaze landing on the front door before circling back to me. Got any sweatpants? I'm soaked. I fetched my sweatpants as she ditched her shoes. I gestured towards the bathroom, but she turned away, slipping out of her wet jeans and underwear in one swift motion. Then she took her time drying off, the silent invitation hanging heavy in the air. It felt like a gamble for her, teetering on the edge of vulnerability and rejection. After all, being turned down by someone equally scorned who hadn't been close to anyone for ages would have been too much. A wave of frustration washed over me, directed not at her but at my wife for putting me in such a precarious position. Nikki's voice was shaky as she confessed, I can't believe Justin could do this. Moving closer, I gently touched her thigh, feeling her shiver under my touch. Her breath hitched, but she didn't pull away. My touch seemed to be both a question and an answer. I might not like you much, but I despise him, she said finally, pushing me back with a mix of confusion and defiance. In response, I casually removed my sweater, letting it fall to the ground, an unspoken invitation hanging between us. Nikki watched, the chill from the rain still lingering on her skin as my hands warmed her. I brushed a kiss against her neck, a delicate touch that seemed to send a jolt through her. She let out a soft sigh, her resistance melting away. Without wasting another moment, fueled by a mix of desire and uncertainty about the future, I lifted her onto the dining table. It was a bold move, spurred by the intensity of the moment and the unpredictable nature of our desires. Afterward, as the adrenaline faded, she met my gaze with a complex smile, a mix of satisfaction and newfound connection. In the silence that followed, after tidying up, I tossed her clothes into the dryer, and there we were, sharing a moment of unexpected intimacy, sitting unclothed at the table with cups of now cold tea between us. Her gaze was heavy, her fiery red curls a tangled mess as she looked at me with a mix of emotions. You knew this was going to happen, didn't you, the moment you let me in? Her laughter caught me off guard, innocent yet laced with something deeper. Honestly, the thought didn't cross my mind until your jeans came off, she admitted with a mischievous glint. The atmosphere lightened, if only for a moment. I was scared you'd say no. I couldn't help but smile, a genuine one this time. How could I, especially after hearing how Justin's been neglecting you? It's unbelievable. She leaned in, a serious look in her eyes. And Beth? How could she possibly ignore what you've just shared with me? You're worlds apart from Justin. I sighed, the weight of the situation settling in. Beth feels distant, caught up in her own struggles ever since the twins. It's like we're on separate paths. She's more mother than partner now. The air between us was charged, frustration and a shared sense of betrayal hanging heavy. I still don't like you, bastard witch, she muttered. The words were harsh, but they lacked true venom. We were allies in our misery, not enemies. If we're going to take a stand, let's see if your sister can watch the kids tomorrow. We need to clear the air, literally and figuratively. This room. It's a bit too telling of what went on. I half joked about the need for some air freshener to disguise the evidence of our shared defiance. She hastily redressed and disappeared through the door. The silence of the house enveloped me. I busied myself with cleaning, making sure every trace of our encounter was erased. Towels and clothes swirled together in the washing machine. Beth's return home later that evening was met with an unusual calm. Gone were the heated debates and the circle of denial and lies that usually colored our late-night conversations. Her confusion was palpable, a stark contrast to the usual tension. It's funny how a moment of passion can dull the sharp edges of bitterness. The pristine state of the kitchen didn't escape her notice either. She made a passing remark about the effectiveness of the air freshener, but her words barely registered. The next morning, I skipped the charade of our habitual awkward goodbye kiss. Without a glance back, I left for work, a clear signal that I was done wallowing in misery. At work, I secured a friend's car for the next few months. Meanwhile, Nikki's sister, bearing an uncanny resemblance to her, agreed to look after the kids. Nikki and I set out with a purpose: to investigate her cousin's construction company trailer for any evidence of wrongdoing. Climbing into the car, Nikki grimaced. "I'm sore. It's been ages since I've been with anyone, and let's just say you weren't exactly soft." I couldn't help but arch an eyebrow at her comment. "Gentleness wasn't exactly the vibe," I retorted, noticing a fleeting smile break through her attempt to remain stoic. For the first time since we met, Nikki had applied some makeup, albeit clumsily. It was a small yet telling effort to reclaim some semblance of normalcy amid the chaos. In an unexpected twist, I veered off our original path and headed for the shopping center. Our attempt at conversation was awkward, punctuated by long pauses and brief exchanges that fizzled out as quickly as they sparked. It wasn't until we arrived at the bustling parking lot that she voiced her confusion. "Are they here?" "No, but if we're aiming to hit them where it hurts, we've got some groundwork to lay," I said, leading her towards an unexpected destination, the makeup counter at Macy's. Her gaze narrowed, suspicion and defiance mixing in her eyes. "Think of it as crafting a new persona," I suggested. For the next hour, 2 makeup artists transformed Nikki, teaching her the art of their trade. The result was a Nikki who radiated a raw, undeniable allure. She wasn't just pretty, she was captivating in a way that demanded attention. "This is perfect. Sure, it's $100 I could have spent on groceries, but I'll make do. A little sacrifice for a bigger game," I rationalized as we left, Nikki gripping her new treasures like they were invaluable. She was skeptical. "So what's the grand scheme here? We make them pay by playing to their weaknesses. Justin's lost interest in what he thinks he knows, and Beth, she'll be green with envy over you. Keep the makeup a secret at home. Use it as our little weapon when we're out," I elaborated, laying out the plan in full. Nikki sat in silence, processing the strategy. "This is a lot complicated in the long haul," she finally said, skepticism lacing her tone. I shrugged, a half-smile playing on my lips. "Got any better ideas?" Her slight smile conceded. "No, not really," she whispered, a request in her voice tinged with mischief. She asked to use my place as a safe haven to remove her makeup before facing Justin. Moments later, she emerged from the bathroom, the mischievous gleam in her eye amplified by her daring smile. Makeup still painted on her face, but now with nothing else. Her intentions were clear, challenging the caution she had advised earlier. "I thought we agreed not to expect anything," I said. "It'd be a waste to let this makeup go unnoticed," she teased, letting the towel fall effortlessly to the floor. Afterward, we made our way to her sister's, where Nikki enlisted her sibling into our scheme. It was evident her sister harbored no love for Justin, making her a perfect ally in our unfolding plan. Over the months that followed, we embarked on a journey of self-improvement. I squeezed in workouts during my lunch breaks, while Nikki dedicated her efforts at home. Together, we transformed the basement into our personal gym, shedding the past and building our strength. Both of us emerged leaner and more formidable. To our spouses, we remained unnoticed, our changing bodies concealed beneath layers of loose clothing, our endeavors as invisible to them as we seemed to be. Our intimacy flourished in the shadows of our spouse's indifference, with passions igniting more frequently than I had ever experienced with Beth. Bound by a shared resolve to break free from the mundane, we transformed my basement into an impromptu dance studio, embarking on a journey neither of us was prepared for. With the help of countless YouTube tutorials, our evenings and weekends, once hollow, now pulsed with the rhythm of dance. We started with the basics, gradually mastering more complex moves. Salsa became our favorite, a dance we reserved for the crescendo of our routine, a symbol of our shared joy and rebellion. I quickly came to understand that my alliance with Nikki was akin to dancing on the edge of a volcano. Her temperament was unpredictable, reminiscent of a storm ready to burst at any moment. The fallout from her entanglements with Beth and Justin had shattered something vital within her, a barrier of rationality, perhaps leaving her teetering on the brink. I found myself perpetually watchful, keenly aware that her moments of tranquility were rare, found only in the embrace of passion or the innocent company of our children. Her fierce love for them was the one constant in her whirlwind of emotions. Our exchange of barbs, bastard and witch, became twisted terms of endearment, symbols of our shared struggle rather than insults. Yet beneath the surface of our unconventional bond, there lay a mission that demanded our utmost caution and cunning. Nikki ingeniously orchestrated a daytime reconnaissance of the construction company's trailer, capturing the scene with her cell phone. The cousins' oversight and security, no alarm, was our golden ticket. We infiltrated the site multiple times, meticulously documenting every piece of information hidden within its confines. The treasure trove of documents we uncovered in Justin's desk and Beth's purse was particularly enlightening. The dynamic with our spouses shifted significantly. Beth seemed to flounder without the fuel of our arguments, craving the conflict, perhaps as a means to absolve her own guilt. I, however, had no interest in indulging her, drained from the day's escapades with Nikki. It dawned on me that Beth might have been clinging to these disputes as a way to rationalize her actions to herself, her confusion mounting with each passing day. Justin, for his part, appeared to believe Nikki had simply resigned herself to defeat. Amidst this tangled web of deception and discovery, a stroke of luck came my way. A refund of a $2,000 deposit for a romantic getaway to a Mexican beach resort intended for Beth and me. A trip that, under the circumstances, was off the table. The return of these funds, unexpected as it was, offered a financial cushion that would undoubtedly prove useful in the days to come. As Beth found more reasons to spend her nights with Justin, Nikki and I sought refuge and release in the rhythm of dance at a local club, testing the waters with the mooseweed. Homed in secrecy. While the dance floor offered a fleeting escape, Nikki's volatility loomed over us, an ever-present shadow. Her mood swings were unpredictable, swinging from euphoria to near-violent intensity at the slightest provocation. One evening threatened to unravel all the restraint I had practiced. By then, Nikki's transformation was undeniable, her allure magnified by our shared fitness regime and intimate moments. It was inevitable that we drew stares, her magnetic presence pulling attention from every corner of the room. Nikki thrived under the gaze of the crowd, yet she navigated the attention with loyalty to those she felt had been left behind, consciously toning down her interactions with other men. But boundaries are often ignored in the dim lights of a club. That night, as I danced with a cheerful blonde, the evening took a precarious turn. A bold, unwelcome advance toward Nikki escalated despite her clear refusal. In a flash, I was pulling Nikki away by her hair, just as her fingernails grazed the man's face, narrowly missing his eye, but leaving a vivid reminder of her ferocity. With the scene teetering on the brink of chaos, Nikki turned the moment on its head. She drew close, her frustration morphing into a provocative challenge. "Bastard, that hurt," she hissed, before her tone shifted to a sultry tease. "But you know just how to get to me, don't you?" Her gaze then flicked to the blonde by my side, offering a mischievous wink. "Sweetheart, you can do so much better than him. You deserve someone who isn't just a jerk." The incident, fraught with tension and unexpected turns, underscored the complex dance of our relationship, where danger and desire intertwined, leaving us forever on the edge. The tension crackled in the air as we hurried out under the street, our pace quickening instinctively upon spotting 3 men in safety t-shirts making a beeline toward us. The parking lot was a maze of cars, eerily deserted of people. That's when we spotted him, the guy with the scratches from earlier, flanked by his 2 friends, moving with purpose in our direction. Nikki's response to their approach was a mix of defiance and dark amusement as she taunted, her smile sharp and daring. "So formal, introducing yourself like that. And for what? So your buddy here can play hero while you try to get your hands on me?" She halted, feigning fear, drawing him in. But as he reached for her, mistaking her pause for submission, I caught the flash of something feral in Nikki's eyes. It was a look I knew all too well, the prelude to chaos. And as the biggest of the trio loomed behind me, my own instincts kicked in, primed for the confrontation. Nikki's reaction was swift and visceral. She didn't reach out with her hands, she struck with her teeth, sinking them into the man's flesh with a ferocity that elicited a scream of agony. As I spun to face my own adversary, the adrenaline surged. My experience wasn't in the cage of an MMA fight, but the streets had been my proving ground. Yet it was Nikki's wild spirit that captivated my focus. I intervened just as she aimed another strike, pulling her back with all my might. "Nikki, stop!" The intensity of her gaze met mine, wild, unbridled. And then, as if the storm within her had passed, she relaxed into a chilling smile, retreating from the fray. I noticed 2 onlookers, a petite blonde and a dark-haired goth girl watching from a short distance, their expressions a mixture of shock and disbelief, frozen witnesses to the night's unexpected turn. Nikki's gaze drifted to the stunned blonde, and she moved toward her with a purpose I couldn't fathom. My instinct screamed to pull Nikki away, to flee before the night spiraled beyond our control, yet confrontation now would only fan the flames of her unpredictable temper. As she towered over the immobilized blonde, my warning was a futile attempt to rein her in. "Nikki, come on, she's not part of this." But Nikki's response was a smirk full of secrets. "Oh, I know," she murmured before pulling the blonde into a kiss that was returned with unexpected passion. The moment they parted, the blonde's gaze lingered on Nikki, utterly bewitched. "Trust me, you deserve better than him," Nikki whispered, a mix of venom and vindication in her voice. Our retreat to the car was swift, the distant wail of an ambulance punctuating the night. The fear that our actions had been noted gnawed at me as we drove in silence. Once parked, the urgency of our escape gave way to Nikki's desires, the car becoming our refuge until she was content. In the aftermath, Nikki's vulnerability surfaced. I really screwed up, didn't I? Her question hung heavy between us. We all have our moments, but yeah, that was intense. The satisfaction in her voice when she spoke of the violence was chilling. It felt so good to hurt him, she confessed, a dark revelation that left me uneasy. It's a bit like a Hannibal Lecter vibe, Nikki. Unsettling. Her laughter briefly cut through the tension. You think his girlfriend was cool with it? She joked, trying to lighten the mood. Her sudden seriousness caught me off guard. Promise me, don't let me go there again, seriously. The fear in her eyes was raw, a stark contrast to the fierce woman who had faced down danger. You were defending yourself. But I enjoyed it too much. What if I lose myself next time? Her voice broke, revealing a vulnerability that frightened me more than any confrontation we had faced. Nikki was walking a tightrope, teetering on the edge of needing more than just my support, perhaps professional help, medication, or regular checkups. The aftermath of the parking lot confrontation was a whirlwind. The official report painted it as an altercation involving a gang of 6 men and a Hispanic woman, with a bystander named Amber at the scene. It was almost comical, considering the truth of that night. Looks like you left quite the mark on Amber, I joked, showing Nikki the paperwork. Her smile was wistful. She seemed nice, strawberry lip gloss and all. Are you into girls now? It wasn't even about that, just a bit of fun at the club. But in that parking lot, she was drawn to me. I could see it in her eyes. Being with you. I guess I've just stopped seeing any boundaries when it comes to sex. Yet the chaos of that night seemed to be a turning point for Nikki. She began to pull herself together, making slow but visible progress. There were moments when I could see her inner struggle, the battle to keep her darker impulses at bay. And sometimes she actually succeeded. We couldn't always count on Nikki's sister to look after the kids, so Jamie often ended up with us. Those nights, as we tucked them into bed, I found myself stealing glances at Nikki. There was a tenderness to her then, a vulnerability that the daylight hours rarely revealed. And when she caught me looking, her smile was a mix of sorrow and warmth, a fleeting glimpse of the woman fighting to emerge from the shadows of her own turmoil. In those quiet moments, it felt like her demons were miles away, giving us a brief respite from the storm. I had this nagging feeling that it was only a matter of time before things escalated. And sure enough, Beth caught me shirtless one day, her eyes widening as she noted the changes in my physique. I brushed off her comment quickly, covering up. My greatest concern wasn't her noticing my toned body, but rather the marks Nikki had left on my skin the night before. Beth's growing suspicion was a clear sign it was time to escalate our plans. I shared my concerns with Nikki, and our routine took a sharp turn. Instead of our usual blend of workouts and intimate moments, we found ourselves armed with a borrowed car and a digital camera, tailing Beth and Justin from a safe distance. Nikki's diligence with their receipts and credit card statements soon paid off, revealing a pattern in their escapades. Beth played her cards close to the chest, but Justin, underestimating Nikki, grew careless. His parents owned a modest cabin by the beach, tucked away in the woods. Despite its rundown appearance, the mileage on their car hinted that it was their secret getaway every Friday they skipped the gym. We parked off the road and stealthily approached the cabin, camera in hand. The lack of curtains made our task easier than expected. By the time we found a good vantage point, Beth and Justin were already entwined on the bed, oblivious to the world outside. Before heading back, I discreetly let air out of one of Justin's tires, a small insurance policy should they decide to leave prematurely. We dropped the film off at a darkroom known for its discretion, the kind of place that dealt with sensitive imagery without questions. Then we headed back, the weight of what we'd just done hanging between us, a mixture of apprehension and the thrill of the chase. Beth staggered in well past her usual time, her appearance a clear testament to a night gone awry, clothes wrinkled, hair a mess. The next day, Nikki couldn't contain her amusement as she relayed how Justin had not only had to change a tire, but also ran over a nail, forcing them into a miserable pit stop in the rain miles from home. Talk about karma, she chuckled. In the following days, our conversations veered towards the future, what we each desired from it. Nikki's proposition took me by surprise, but after some thought, I found myself on board with her plan. We bided our time, laying low until the moment was right. About 3 weeks after gathering our evidence, we noticed a pattern in Beth and Justin's weekend escapades. A predictable sequence of gym, illicit rendezvous, and nightclubs, culminating in their return home in the early hours of Sunday. This weekend, however, we had a different script in mind. With the kids safely with Nikki's sister, we embarked on our mission. Our first stop was a shopping spree, where Nikki selected a stunning dark emerald dress that hugged her curves, its deep neckline and short hem accentuating her features against the backdrop of her fiery hair. I opted for a sleek dark gray suit paired with a black shirt, the ensemble striking in its simplicity. Our next destination was a hair salon, where I urged the stylist to unleash their creativity on Nikki's hair and makeup. Transformed and dressed to the nines, we made our way to the club, ready to set our plan into motion. As we entered the club, it was clear we were a force to be reckoned with. Nikki, radiating allure and confidence, ensured we didn't even pause at the door. The bouncer, recognizing the vibe we brought to the venue, waved us through without a second thought. We made a beeline for the dance floor, setting the energy for the night before steering towards our real target, Beth and Justin's usual spot. A so-called marital throne at a secluded table was where we found them. Beth was draped in a yellow dress I hadn't seen before, looking every bit the epitome of grace and sophistication. Justin complimented her in a sharp blue suit. Nikki, in contrast, was a vision of rebellious glamour, her attire screaming defiance against traditional elegance, turning heads with every step. I made a show of seating Nikki with a flourish, their stunned silence speaking volumes as we joined them uninvited. My opening gambit was casual, a light jab at the opulence surrounding us, but it was Justin's scowl at Nikki that cut the air with tension. The conversation turned icy when the topic of Nikki's dress came up. "You splurged on this?" they implied, with a mix of disdain and curiosity. My response was curt, my annoyance barely contained. It was a purchase, not a splurge. I then laid out the photographic evidence of their secret rendezvous, selecting the most unflattering shots from our covert operation, images capturing moments far from their best. I revealed the source of the funds with a touch of bitterness. Part of my refund from a romantic getaway I had planned for Beth and me. Since that's off the table, I figured I'd invest in something revealing. The flicker of disappointment, or perhaps realization of an unexpected financial oversight, crossed Beth's face. It didn't go unnoticed. It was a moment of vulnerability, a crack in the facade that hinted at the complex emotions swirling beneath the surface. As the photographs sprawled across the table, the air thickened with tension. Justin's facade crumbled, revealing a flicker of fear, while Beth's face drained of color. "So how long has this been going on?" I challenged, my tone laced with disdain. "We've been Keogh conspirators for 4 months now. How did you uncover everything?" It turns out I didn't have to dig deep. You both acted as if we'd be too broken, too defeated to retaliate. Justin, scrambling for footing in the conversation, smirked with feigned indifference. "And what, did you two fall hopelessly in love?" Nikki's response was a razor-sharp grin. "Like him? Not a chance. He's an utter jerk. And her? Couldn't stand her more." Her smile then took on a predatory edge. "But the sex," she paused, a wicked gleam in her eyes. "It's out of this world. Pure, raw, fueled by vengeance. We've explored territories you wouldn't dare dream of." Her gaze locked onto Beth, cold and calculating. "Venturing into realms of pleasure you've never even considered." Beth's reaction was visceral, a mix of shock and hurt as she turned to me. "This is beyond betrayal. We were supposed to be partners." My laughter was bitter, devoid of any real humor. "Partners? You were biding your time with him, indulging in secret trysts while I played the dutiful recluse. My office became a parade of bad news, all while you flaunted your affair, making a mockery of our lives." The room was heavy with accusations and revelations, the once hidden truths now laid bare for all to see, turning private failures into public spectacles. Everything was out in the open, irrevocably changing the game. I could feel the anger boiling up inside me, hot and fast, but then Nikki gave my leg a reassuring squeeze. This time around, Nikki was the one keeping her cool. She took charge with a calm I admired. "Divorces are going to be straightforward. They're all about cheating. It won't change the money situation, but let's be honest, it's only right. And it'll definitely make us feel a bit better." My new hobby? Making sure everyone sees those photos, along with a detailed story of how you wrecked your marriage, let down your families, colleagues, bosses. I'll even track down your first-grade Sunday school teacher. Her gaze lingered on Justin for a moment. "Oh, and I'm moving in with my sister for a bit, taking Jamie with me." I straightened up, focused, and delivered my next words like a fastball. "What's really going to hit you hard is that you two have been dipping into funds from a building materials account at a construction company. It took us ages to piece it together, but when Nikki and I saw how you were living it up, spending like there was no tomorrow, we knew something was off. Turns out we've gathered more than enough evidence to prove it. You're looking at tax evasion, wire fraud, even mail fraud. So, even if Justin's cousin turns a blind eye, you're in deep trouble. You, Justin, might get off with 5 to 10 years behind bars." I pointed squarely at Justin and Beth. You're not off the hook either, a few years in the slammer for being an accomplice. Beth's eyes popped open, panic written all over her face. She stumbled over her words, trying to defend herself. I didn't know. I thought it was his money, and I just put it in the account to keep it safe in case of a divorce. I didn't let her finish. Right, you were just holding it for a friend. Besides, mixing that money with our divorce? If my name was on that account, I'd think you were setting me up, and trust me, that would have ended really badly for you. Beth and Justin's faces drained of color. I could tell the thought had crossed their minds before, but they had ruled it out. It was time to lay down our cards, the offer Nikki and I had cooked up. Justin, listen up. You've got one shot at a better life. Take it. Quit your job and make a break for the mountains at least 250 miles away. Pack your car with just your clothes, football trophies, and your yearbook. Nothing else. Not a single extra thing. Nikki's going to file for divorce, and she won't see a cent from it, thanks to your little arrangement with your cousin. We won't breathe a word to the police or your cousin about what's going on, but if your cousin stumbles upon this mess and decides to act, that's on you. I'd advise you to return any money you've got to his company account. Believe me, whether or not he comes after you might just depend on that. The room hung heavy with tension, the kind that wraps around your throat, thick and suffocating. This was more than just a crossroad for Justin. It was a lifeline, one last chance to dodge a bullet that was already halfway to its target. I turned to Beth with a firm look. I'm filing for divorce. I get the kids, no alimony for you, and we're even. Your affair is the reason. It's simple. Agree or face jail and lose the kids completely. When it comes to our stuff, write down what you want, but keep it brief. You'll get your clothes and all those shoes of yours. Nikki couldn't resist jumping in. He said you could have your things, but honestly your shoes don't fit me and I'm not into your clothes. And since I've stopped wearing underwear around him, your granny panties are all yours. I couldn't help but crack a smile at Nikki's words while Beth looked like she was struggling to keep her composure. Go, find a job, move back in with your folks or whoever. It doesn't matter to me. You'll get to see the kids plenty. I'm not going to stop you. You're an okay mom, and I won't drag your parents into this, won't tell them why we split. I locked eyes with both of them, making sure they were listening. You have until midnight tomorrow. If Justin isn't miles away by then, we go to his cousin and the police. This deal is only good if you both agree. Nikki leaned in, her dramatic neckline drawing attention, maybe a final jab at Beth. You both have done something remarkable, really. You've brought Nikki and me together. We always said we had nothing in common, couldn't even pick a movie without an argument, hated each other's music. If he started on about his hobbies, I'd be out cold, I said, laying it all out there. It was a peculiar moment, heavy with choices and consequences, but underneath it all, there was an odd sense of closure and maybe, just maybe, a new beginning. Nikki's gaze locked onto Justin with the intensity of a predator zeroing in on its next meal. The only thing we figured out about how to deal with you was by connecting in the one way we could. We made love. That was our only solace. If we ever sat down for dinner, it was just to refuel for another round. Her eyes shifted to Beth. I can't fathom why you'd leave him for a fool, and don't think I'm playing games. If you doubt it, why don't you join us next time? It might just turn up the heat even more, if that's even possible. Glancing at my watch, I knew it was time to wrap this up. We've got to stick to the agreement. Sorry, but I need to pick up the kids. Standing up, I reached out for Nikki. It was clear something in her had shifted. Through this confrontation with Justin and Beth, the wild rage seemed to have vanished, leaving behind a different Nikki. Her fiery passion remained, yet the unsettling spark of madness had faded away. Beth was quick on the draw, showing up at my door just after I'd put the kids to bed. We need to talk, she insisted, stepping inside. I settled into an easy chair. This conversation is overdue, but honestly, we can't let this guy tear us apart. Hold it. I cut her off, my hand up. The real problem in our marriage is staring me right in the face. Beth looked at me, her expression one of disdain, something I rarely saw from her. You don't get it, Beth. Your fate could have been much worse. Nikki fought for you, pleaded for your cause, tried to pin the blame on Justin. You can't imagine what that took. She detested you, yet she went to bat for you. She thinks this whole mess is partly her fault. I'm not sure I see it that way, but a deal's a deal. Because she asked me to, I continued, calming the rising anger before it could erupt. Had that money been hidden in my name, or if the twins' DNA told a different story, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Beth's face went pale as the reality set in, the isolation tangible. When do I need to leave? She finally asked. Technically by tomorrow midnight, for the sake of symmetry. But you've got a week. It'll take you at least 2 days to pack all those shoes, and frankly, I can't wait to see them gone." Her reply was a soft murmur that sounded like an apology as she headed upstairs. It took her 5 days to clear out, leaving the echo of her presence in a home now filled with just the kids and me. Even with the twins' laughter, the place felt too quiet, too empty. Rumor had it that Justin's cousin was on the hunt but steering clear of the cops. I hope Justin found a good hiding spot. His cousin wasn't someone you'd want to cross paths with. And maybe, just maybe, I hadn't kept my mouth completely shut about his whereabouts. 2 weeks later, I decided it was okay for the twins to spend the weekend with Beth and her folks. They knew the drill, and Beth was well aware that stepping out of line meant she could be looking at bars instead of stars. Then, close to midnight, there was a knock. Opening the door, there stood Nikki, decked out as if the night was just beginning, her excitement palpable. "She's gone." I nodded back to her parents, trying to piece together the puzzle of a divorce petition with lipstick scrawled across it in bright red. "Thanks for mailing that," Nikki said with a gleam in her eye, that wild grin spreading across her face. Figured it was time for a parting gift. "Let's stir the pot," I said, a half smile playing on my lips. I'd promised not to drag Beth's parents into this, but Nikki, she had made no such promises. In fact, she'd done just the opposite. Soon, Beth's family and friends were receiving packages that would leave Beth explaining for years to come. Nikki's smile widened. "Brought you a housewarming present." I almost pointed out that I hadn't moved, but then it hit me, she was right. The house felt different now, almost like a fresh start. "I think it's time for dessert." A familiar face peeked from behind Nikki, shy and curious. Amber had joined us, innocent and unprepared for the whirlwind she was about to enter. We welcomed her into our chaos more as a spark than a partner, but she wasn't complaining. Between Nikki and me, Amber got a crash course in indulgence, her reactions proving she was an eager student. Nikki had that victorious smirk, like the cat that got the cream. The morning light crept in as Nikki helped Amber to her car, her steps uncertain and wobbly from the night before. Days passed, and Nikki would show up, sometimes alone, other times with Jamie in tow. When the house quieted down, the children asleep, Nikki would wordlessly take my hand, leading me to a place where words were unnecessary. Our movements were deliberate, a slow dance of rediscovery. Afterwards, as we lay there, her head on my shoulder, her fingers idly drawing patterns. On my chest, the silence was heavy with unsaid things. "We can't keep doing this, Nikki." I finally broke the silence, feeling her body stiffen at my words. "It's like we agreed without saying it. We have nothing in common, no emotional ties, and this silence between us, it's unsettling." Then her laughter, soft and knowing, vibrated against my skin as she traced a heart around mine. "You must have been a slow learner as a kid. Did they need to bring in a specialist to teach you to walk?" "Jerk," I retorted softly. "The thing with Beth?" Nikki decided her fate. Nikki, with her layers and her madness, always puzzles me. It's hard to follow her logic at times. Maybe she thinks redemption is a rare commodity, or perhaps she wanted Beth to witness the full extent of her loss. Make no mistake, Beth lost everything she held dear, and Nikki orchestrated it meticulously. Yet, I suspect Nikki wouldn't find much joy in Beth being locked away. She wouldn't get to savor the drama. In time, Nikki might even dictate how Beth sees her daughters. This whole saga, starting from the day Nikki stood defiant in the rain, might have been her design, but truthfully, I'm hesitant to ask. Her answer might just be as complex as her plans. Nikki has carved out a space in my heart that's all her own. She might not have Beth's looks, but that doesn't matter one bit. Nikki's love is fierce, total, and unwavering. The kind that doesn't let go until there's nothing left but dust. Amber has become a familiar face around us, thanks to Nikki, but she's not here to shake things up. To Nikki, Amber is like a bonus, something special she wants to share with me. Nikki once described Amber as that slice of cheesecake you can't possibly finish alone but are more than happy to share. It's Nikki's way of showing love, even if it's a bit left field. Yes, she can be manipulative, a whirlwind of crazy, maybe even crossing the line into dangerous territory, but that's Nikki, through and through.